first of all, can you tell me when, where, and how did you meet your wife?
She was studying in Chicago, Loyola University, a private university, and that's where we first met. We had communicated through some emails for a while, and then we finally met, and we continued to spend time with one another after that. So Chicago was the first place where we met.
And why did you decide to come to Japan?
Japan. We were living in Alaska at the time, and maybe I should back up. So we lived in Japan for 1 year, and then we moved from Japan to Alaska, where we were living, and my wife became pregnant, and our son was born with clubfoot. So that's where both of the feet are turned in. So he needed medical treatment, and where we were living in Alaska, it didn't provide that kind of treatment. We were living in a small village, and even if we were to go to a bigger city in Alaska, they still didn't have treatment for clubfoot. So we decided that Japan would be a better place to live because for healthcare reasons for our son. So that's how we ended up back in Japan.
So you lived in America for a while, came here for a year, and then went back.
Right.
But when you first got married, you were planning to stay in the States for...
Yes, initially we were planning to stay in the States.
And then, when did you separate with your wife? That was sometime after you came to Japan?
Yes, we separated in March of 2007. And at the time, I thought my wife was still living in Nagoya, but 6 months later I found out she had moved from Nagoya to Kumamoto, which was, by bus, it's about 11 hours from Nagoya.
And is she originally from Nagoya, or her?
Yes, she's originally from a city called Chita, which is very close to Nagoya.
And so what was the separation like? Was it fairly amicable, or?
Not really. When I came to Japan, I was hoping to spend more time with my son, kind of catch up on some time we had missed together. But that wasn't possible, I guess. My wife had already had a kind of a routine set up. My son would go to daycare after breakfast, and then he would pretty much spend most of the day away from the house. And I'm not exactly sure where he was for the whole day, but I know or knew he came back about 7 p.m. every day when my wife finished with work. So my only time I could spend with my son was about an hour in the morning before he left, and then about an hour at night when he returned. So that was kind of, I complained about that. I complained about not being able to spend more time with my son, and that's kind of my feeling. That's why that led to the separation.
And did you talk about separating, or did she just suddenly leave, or?
Yeah, we got into a disagreement again about how much time I could spend with my son, and she left for the night. I'm not sure where she stayed, but she took our son with her, and later she came back about 2 days later, and we talked a little bit, and she decided that the separation should be longer term. So it really wasn't an amicable separation. She kind of took my son and left, and I didn't know where she was for over about 6 months, I guess.
And you wanted to work things out?
Yes, I suggested that we see a counselor, She refused that idea for a long time, but we did see a counselor just one day for a few hours, and that was a total disaster.
Mm-hmm.
She was very angry with the counselor. He was trying to kind of get both sides of the issue, you know, but she didn't really want to talk about the problem. She just wanted to explain her feelings on the issue, and it was kind of a heated discussion, so it wasn't good.
And you never went back to...
No, that was the only time we met with a counselor. During this time frame, we did meet 3 times at a court. So my wife had filed for divorce. The first proceeding's called a chote procedure, and it's kind of a mediation arrangement. There are 2 retired people, 2 Japanese retired people. There is a court, a person from the court. He's not a judge or a lawyer, but he's just someone in the family court. He was also present at this meeting, along with a translator. There was a translator for me. So these 3 people and my wife, they kind of told me divorce was best for my son. You can file for visitation later. You know, if you love your son, you'll sign these divorce papers. And I wanted to have no part of that. I wanted joint custody, so I wanted to share the responsibility of raising my son. But in Japan, there is no joint custody. You only have sole custody, and one parent is awarded custody of the child, and the other parent is expected to play a very small role in the raising of that child. Many times after that separation, the father or mother, they don't get to see their child again.
So when you had the conversation about separation, did you talk about then what would happen with the child? Or?
There was no discussion. My wife automatically took my child. He was about 2 years old at that time, and there was no discussion of who would get him. I think she automatically thought, since he was 2, that maybe it was in his best interest, but no discussion.
Just because she's a woman?
Yeah, I don't know what her reasons were, but yeah.
She didn't explain why? No,
she was always very elusive. She didn't like to explain much of anything. It was kind of, we'll do things my way, and if you don't like it, that's too bad.
And then, so how long ago was that, the separation?
The separation was in March of 2007.
Okay.
So about 2.5 years ago.
And then how many times have you seen your son since then?
So from March of 2007 until November of 2007, I didn't see him at all. And then starting in November of 2007, I paid my wife 250,000 yen, and she started to let me see my son about once every 5 weeks. But I had to travel from Nagoya to Kumamoto by bus to see him for 1 day, about 7 hours, and then I'd return back to Nagoya the next day. So that worked out pretty good for about a year, maybe a little over a year. And then I think she was expecting me to sign divorce papers. So legally we are still married, and I didn't want to sign the divorce papers because some of the things she promised in her email she wouldn't put into writing. And because she wouldn't put those things into writing, I refused to sign the divorce papers.
And so she said you couldn't see him?
Right. She said no more visitation until the divorce is final. And that was the last time I saw my son was in January of this year, 2009.